Okay.
Oh, so we'll call the meeting to order. And Jessica, if you want to get the agenda thingy up there.
Let me do that real quick.
Oh, there we go. Does somebody want to approve and second the meeting, the agenda?
So moved.
And I can second.
Okay. Yeah, I'll vote to approve the agenda.
Aye.
Okay. Then we can get going. Um, Patty is unable to make this meeting. She's going to watch the video when she is able. Hopefully we can be focused tonight. I know I'm suffering from allergies, and I suspect I am not alone in this. And wanted to go over, we presented our timeline to the mayor and council. We wanted to go over that briefly. And Jessica, if you have any feedback from anybody, I don't know.
No, not really. I think the presentation went really, really well on the 26th. Everybody seemed very open and very supportive of the recommendations from the board, which was really nice. There were two things I thought that we probably needed to revisit. One of which was just the appointments and like when those would happen. And then the other one I had thought about after the fact, of course, reflecting on this, was the candidate filing deadline and the amount of time we have between that and when the Board of Elections actually like when we're able to actually certify the packets, and then when the materials have to go to the printer. It feels like that's a really tight timeline.
Yeah,
I agree.
yeah. Kate and I kept going, okay, then if we bump it there, and we were just trying to figure out
Yeah.
some of it, we were looking at it, some of it seemed to be stuff we could do in parallel while we're approving the addresses and making sure that people are have enough people to vote for, supporting them, that the other people could be approving the finance at the same time.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I
And
don't know.
that's always fine. It's if
Yep.
somebody doesn't fill out their financial disclosure, and because they've revised the financial disclosure forms, it's a little trickier.
Okay.
So, and I don't even know why that happened, but it came from the State Ethics Commission, so we didn't have an option on
No.
that. So that was the only thought
Okay.
only two things I thought we might want to think about.
Yep.
I have not taken these to the town attorney quite yet. We have some other things going on right now, but I think the feedback was wonderful. Everyone was really pleased and supported the concepts behind, why these changes were needed. I guess, does Jahara or Heather, did you have any questions about the mayor and council meeting on the 26th, or any thoughts about any of that? Okay.
Yep. Yep. I was pleased with everyone's support, and they thanked us all for our hard work as well. So that was nice as well. How do you want to deal? The one question was raised by Alan, and it was a legitimate question, which had to do with the appointment of the Board of Elections. And currently, it's in February, and in my mind, it was the February the same year that the elections take place, because we weren't being appointed this February, right? Because that's to me that when we should have been, and we were appointed the February before elections took place, but that was because it was the first time we existed, right? So
Exactly.
when Kate and I made up the timeline, we said no, it shouldn't be in February, it should be in October. February was too soon, but but with Alan's comment that it's supposed to be alternating the opposite year of the election, I don't think we necessarily need to move the appointment of the Board of Elections. If it's,
Yeah, I think so. I need to look back on that because we've not had a like a renewal of the Board of Elections yet.
Yeah.
Like we haven't gone through that yet. So I think I need to ask the town attorney about it because the first year is always weird because it's because of when the board was created and appointed and all that stuff. I don't think October is the wrong time necessarily. I just think that we would have to make a change to, a recently opened section of the charter, which we're already going to do anyways, because there are other sections that need to be open. So I need to
There's
go back and
also,
redo that. Go ahead, Kate.
thank you. There are two different things, I think, that according to the notes that I have, the charter says it should be a year before the next town election, which would be May of
Okay.
2024 for May of 2025.
okay,
And the code says at the February legislative meeting next preceding the town election in May. So that
Okay.
would be like February of 2025. I don't think that's very good. And
No.
I think that maybe both of those are not great, and that maybe October in the even numbered year would be good.
Yeah.
Because that way we'd have a continuous rolling organization. Does that make sense?
It does. And it's just, I think the way Alan had read the one of those was that I think the February one was that it wasn't it wasn't the February of the even year, it was the February of the odd year. Is the
Right,
way
well,
he
that's
interpreted it.
the way I read it too. The words
Okay.
are February legislative meeting next preceding the town election in May. What lawyer wrote that?
Well, that language, I was just sitting here thinking, well, that's gonna be cleaned up no
Yes.
matter what.
Yeah,
Like, let's
right,
simplify it. Anybody should
right.
need to be able to read it. But yeah, you're exactly right. So what it used to be, taking out the Board of Elections altogether, it used to be that the election judges and the Board of Election Appeals was appointed the February prior to the May election. And so that kind of made the appointment, and because the appointments were also done by each ward, so that meant the incumbent was appointing the actual
Right.
judge. So
Right.
that was what we were trying to get away from. So it's always been February before the election. The Board of Elections is totally separate and handled differently, but I don't think it's wrong to do at least the Board of Election Appeals and the Board of Elections in November, or I'm sorry, in October, because
Right.
that separates that out from it's less of a political appointment in that way.
Right.
And it's probably most important for the Board of Election Appeals because if anything's appealed, they're the
Right.
ones who are going to be reviewing.
Yep.
So I don't know that it's wrong per se, but I do think there might be a little bit of like tweaking that has to be done to the charter section related to the Board of Elections. But that I don't think that's a huge deal.
Yeah. And then then the appointment of the judges can be maybe a little bit closer to the election.
Yeah.
And I don't know that, depending on what mechanism is chosen for that.
Yeah, and I think we had that in March.
Yeah.
And so one other thing that when we opened the section of code related to the election judges, one thing that I found, there's a lot of use of the word shall as it relates to the number of election judges. And remember when we had one that dropped out and we couldn't get someone to fill in. I think the Board of Elections should determine how many election judges are needed because we don't need a full slate for a special election when it's only one board.
Right.
And vice versa. We may be super successful and we have a ton of on-site registrations and you may need more than what you have.
Right.
And that's why I think March is still good because you'll have an idea, the board will have an idea by that point, like where we are and how busy the election might be. And this might all change if we go to mail-in elections altogether. So the
Right.
flexibility needs to be there in the language. So whatever sections we have to open with regard to the code or the charter, I'm always in favor of doing like a repeal and replace of those sections so that, and we did not do this the last time around. This I can't recall why, but there was some language that hung out there that that wasn't fully stricken or wasn't fully amended. So just want to clean those things up. But this is going to be probably a heavy lift, not heavy lift, but some work for the town attorney. And so the timing is going to be a little bit hard because we have a lot of stuff there right now that he's working on. So,
Okay.
but I think that those deadlines are okay. Like if
Okay.
we're looking back on that.
That's fine. I like the idea of giving flexibility to the number of actual election judges, because it did seem, it's always seemed like we had too many people. And I understand the notion of having some ward is nice in theory, but it doesn't really serve us in practice, in that we have a really hard time getting anyone to run from some of our areas, nevertheless come in and work as a judge. And if we do change what you need to be a judge, if we can take out the bit about you have to be from a ward, then we can get people from outside of Riverdale, like the other areas do. So
Yeah.
It would be really neat if we could establish like a pool of regional election judges that are all really well trained. And
I was thinking the same thing. Yes.
so I think it'd be great. I mean,
Yes.
and what
Mercenary election judges. Let's go for it.
but that's what we're going for. Like we want people who've been trained and they're familiar with it, and that'll get us away from like not meeting the expectations of people who are appointed as election judges and vice versa. So I think that that might be something we could approach when we do some sort of like a regional board meeting. I'd like to have like a reception or like a little gathering once the town hall reopens. And then we can network a little bit more and have some one-on-one time and see what others think, because they've been doing it longer than we have. So and I think we saw that when we got some stuff back from University Park, and they've got a lot of neat little caveats.
Yeah.
Maybe.
Yeah. So the next step with this timeline stuff basically is we need to wait, and Jessica, you're monitoring the workload for the attorney, and then when it seems like he's got some time to take a look at this, you'll bring it to his attention.
Yeah, I think I'll send it to him and let him think about it a little bit and look at it and schedule it and see what he has time for. This is going to be a little bit more back and forth with him. And we'll make sure we get it to the agenda or onto the council agenda for a work session once we get it drafted. So I think it'll have to come back, of course, to the Board of Elections to review to make sure it's consistent with what you were thinking. And then we could do the same kind of thing where we present it to the council as this is a package of amendments, and let's see where it goes from there. And I think you've got the support. So if we get it cleaned up and good to go, it should be like, let's introduce this stuff at the next meeting and then let's start the process. So that is a very public process that has a built-in like notifications, legal notices, things like that. The only component that I was thinking about and we really need to consider is that when I was putting together the cover memo, there was a section about engaging the community on some of these changes. So we could do one of two things. We could hold the next Board of Elections meeting and invite the public to come and give us feedback, or we could schedule something separate. Unfortunately, the town hall is not ready yet, so it's not like we could just do like an open house. I would love that, but we would have to do it off site, and there are all sorts of little
That's
you know,
not
issues
worth the
that might come
energy.
up with that.
No.
I think we might want to do it via Zoom and like maybe push our meeting back to like 7 or 7:30.
Yeah.
That's what the council meetings usually are, and invite
And
people
then
in.
Yep.
And
I
I
think
think
that
we should
seems
do like
reasonable.
personal invites to like our previous election judges. Like we have some folks that come out only on election day that
Yep.
just we want to hear from them.
Yep. That sounds good.
Put it in the town crier too.
So do you think that the April 17th meeting is too early to ask the public to join us, or?
No, I think if we have some decent questions to ask people when they come, if they come, that, you know, they're, unless you can see some reason that we ought to wait, I think, you know,
You'll know, Jessica, you know
Just
the
go
law
for it.
about how long people, how much notice we need to give people and all of that kind of stuff.
Yeah, so it's not a formal, yeah, Heather is saying, would it make sense to do it in May since it's a
so
year
that
out?
it's a year out.
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh, you know, that
maybe
symmetry
so.
thing, maybe that's not a
Yeah.
bad idea, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, we want to train people that May is an election month, and so
Right.
that might be a great
Yep.
idea.
Right,
Do you want
thank you,
to
Heather,
do it?
yes.
Yeah,
Yep.
Heather, I think that's a great idea. So let's shoot for May. And do you want to do it as like a Board of Elections meeting, or do you want to call like a community meeting, or what would you like to do?
I like it being a Board of Elections led community meeting, right? It's a meeting for the community and we're here to as a resource and to do education. Yeah, because I also, it's also a chance to do a little bit of publicity about what it is we do. And to do some education about that too. Yep,
Okay.
Yeah.
I like what Heather said too.
And that's what I would prefer as well. So I think that would be what we can do is just like anything else, we get the word out, we publicize it with, you know, graphics and flyers, and
Right,
just try to get as many people involved just to make them aware of this component. So it's double two purposes, you know,
Right.
encourage people to get involved, and then these are some of the changes that we're considering.
and what's
Yep.
the ad rate for the front page of the Town Crier print edition?
Well,
We want that.
we're gonna
Yes.
definitely get a save the date in, and
Yeah,
I guess that's
okay.
the other time.
Yep.
When do you want to do it in May?
Well, our
Mhm.
regular meeting would be 1, 2, 3, is it the third Wednesday? So that would be May 15th.
Okay.
Is that correct?
Let me double check. Yep,
Okay,
the third Wednesday is May 15th.
That
Okay.
sounds fine to me. I may end up having to travel to New Mexico to see my mother-in-law, but I can do Zoom from New Mexico, so
Do love those
it'll be fine.
virtual meetings that allows us to do that. Okay.
Yeah.
yep,
And is 7 or 7:30 okay for everybody?
yeah, whatever
Yep.
time is best.
Yep.
We'll
And
make it
especially
work.
since we have a couple of months' notice, so
Right.
that we can adjust our schedules.
What do you think, Jahara? You haven't said anything.
She gave us a big
Thumbs
thumbs up.
up.
Yeah.
Thumbs up. I'm writing down, so I didn't see the thumbs.
Yeah. Uh, yeah, so we've got things moving. It feels really good. And I think before that meeting in May, it would be nice if we had some kind of bullet points that talk about the biggest the biggest changes we're talking about, and in real plain language, and with the reasons why, you know, try
Yep.
to like 5 things. I don't think it's, I think that the changes that need to be made in multiple places, but the reasoning is pretty consistent across the
Through
board.
line. Yep.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
And we can also, when we meet in April, we can determine those bullet points and we can actually put them in the town crier. So
Okay,
people will kind of know what we're talking about before they come.
that sounds
Right.
wonderful.
Great.
Okay.
Okay.
I think that gets us to item 4, but I think that was what Heather was going to talk about, and I think she's stuck on the metro still. Ah, there she
Oh,
is.
there she is. She's in the
I'm on
quiet
the-
car though.
I'm on the mark. I'm not on the quiet car.
Okay.
I know the rules. I know the rules. Yeah, I don't know what's helpful to talk through. It would be helpful for me to know whether folks have looked at the two Google Docs and
I
the recommended
did.
changes, because
What did I
most of
do
them
about
are pretty insignificant. The only things that we should probably like draw some attention to are places where it seemed to me like the two documents disagreed, or places where, and I think, Kate pointed out one of those. I don't remember whether I caught that or not. So I think there were some disagreements between the documents, or some sort of like, there were a couple places where there was circular logic, where the code referred to the charter and the charter referred to the code, and neither of them
Yeah.
had an answer. So those are places where we need to like propose an answer.
Okay.
And then there were a couple of places where I made a recommendation, like, hey, in our conversations, I think we talked about doing this differently. It seems like we actually need to change the code or change the charter, but this is a decision point where we need to make a recommendation, proactively. So I think that's the only context I would give. I don't know if it makes sense for us to like walk through all of those. I don't have it up in front of me. Or whether we want to, I could probably organize those into like, here are these 6 questions from these 2 documents, rather than like walking through these 2 documents.
Yep.
Right.
I think that makes sense. And some of these things to me don't, if they're clarity and cleaning up the language, that's stuff that the attorney can do without much input if we just kind of flag it. Decision points and things that we need to clarify, those are things that'll probably need to go through the process along with the timeline changes, right? So if you can flag the difference between those two, that would be great. Yeah.
And Heather, I'm sorry, I haven't had a chance to go through all of those documents yet, but I'm going to try to do that as soon as possible. The one thing that I wanted to mention, and actually Kate had this question when she was talking about the University Park charter and code. The way we do the charter and code is like archaic. Like it is very, very old school. It's literally a Word document. If it ever is corrupted, like I don't even know what to say will happen. But one of the projects that I'm working on and haven't gotten it launched yet is working with one of the municipal code companies, and there's really only 2 or 3 out there, and doing I forget, recodification. So they would review the entire charter and code specifically for the things that Heather just talked about, places where they conflict, where state law has changed. So they're referencing state law that no longer exists. And the same thing with county code when they're referencing any sort of outside documents that are changing or have changed. So that is really exciting, and it's probably an over a year-long process. The other piece I'm hoping for is a way to translate it easily. So there's a translation button. I don't know how we expect people to follow laws that they can't read, but aside from that, I'm hoping that we'll have those 2 pieces in place. So I totally agree, Kate, that University Park is awesome with the way their code is laid out. Ours will be there. We'll get there.
Well, how come they're better? I don't like that.
They do have, I mean, it's a very standard format that you find
I'm
really
sure.
everywhere.
I'm sure.
So there's only 2 companies, like I said. In fact, I just had my staff start refreshing the quote that we had gotten probably a year and a half or 2 years ago to get it ready to do it again, to relaunch that. So that'll be going on at the same time. It doesn't change our efforts or what the board should be doing, but I thought it would be nice to know that we are trying to come into modern times and have a document that everybody can understand and read and all that. So those language issues, so where you're like, who wrote that? You know, that will all be cleaned up, hopefully. I don't know how you
Excellent.
expect people to follow laws that they, you know, that are not easy to read and understand. So
Yep.
that would be the goal.
And if they're ambiguous and can be interpreted depending on who wants to apply them where, I don't like that. Yeah. Yeah. Okay.
It makes it hard for the board, you know, because there's so much gray area there, if you will, because you have to make judgment calls. And so if we can avoid too much of that, it's probably good.
Yeah. And that'll help when we're doing the revision to the manual as well.
I think so too. So
Okay, so
Um,
my next step
Yep.
is to take those two documents and pull out. Oh, my frozen. Okay. I think I'm good. Okay, so my next step is to take these two documents and pull out the places where there are either decision points or conflicting information.
Mhm.
And I'll email those out to everybody.
Excellent.
Great,
Okay.
great.
I don't think there's anything else that we need to do, unless something comes up. Did we make a decision about the University Park stuff? What was going on with that? There was the email chain and
Right.
I-
I think we should invite them to come over for a
Mhm.
meeting and maybe we should do a regional invitation. I thought that their stuff was, their approach was simple and direct and useful. And so,
Yep.
but I'd like to know more about, am I right that they send a ballot to every address?
Wow.
Not to every address. I take it back, to every registered
Registered
voter.
voter.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
Yep.
I don't know what they do. One of the things that I'm interested in is, what do you do about people who are registered in University Park, but who are, they're on sabbatical, all those people. And
Yeah.
there's a lot of people who work at the university. There's people who are in the foreign service and in the military, and they have a right to vote.
Yep.
So how do you handle that?
And so University Park is probably, they're smaller than we are, so that would be easier for us to probably implement. And so
Yes,
I'd be curious to know like what vendor they use, and I'm
right,
sure they do barcodes and things like that. So I'm
right.
curious to see how that works. The
So
other
maybe
issue,
it would be good to set up a meeting with them earlier rather than later, like for June, if
yep,
they're
I can reach
willing.
Yep. That'd be nice.
out. Got it. And did we never met with Hyattsville, did
No, we
we?
never did. They meet during the day.
And let me
And
see about
we
that.
had talked about, did we talk about inviting them? Or we
I
invited them to come if they wanted or something to one of our meetings? I don't
Yeah, I
remember.
have to go. I think they do a phenomenal job in engagement and outreach.
Yes,
I mean,
they
just
are
amazing.
terrific.
And so it's always hard to compare us when they have much larger staff, much larger budgets.
Yeah.
But I think we can always take some of the really cool ideas and
Mhm.
maybe make them the size that fits Riverdale
Yeah.
Park. So
Mhm.
let's reach back out to Laura. I know she was doing the program that I did last year, the Certified Public Manager program through University of Baltimore. So it's a lot. So
Yeah,
I'll see if I can connect with her and try to get that squared away. But they do an amazing job in
yeah,
Hyattsville.
they do. They do.
Nice.
But, and University Park is way more like us. I mean, they are a lot more like drop a flyer on every doorstep kind of people over there.
I do
Did
love
we-
that grassroots engagement.
Yes.
Did we ever get anywhere with the potential starting to think about outreach to people who are on the other side of the Anacostia? How we're gonna
Oh,
try to,
Kenilworth Avenue.
yeah.
Yeah.
I know, Jessica, you had said something about potentially finding a vendor who could help us. Is
Yeah.
that, I know, I think Jahira, you had said that outreach was important to you. Was that I'm trying to remember what year, was that what you were? I'm trying to remember what you were keen on. Yeah, it was outreach stuff, yeah. I think that's gonna be a slow process, so
So we gotta
in
get going.
totally different way. So I think we need to start thinking about how to reach people over there. Do you think it makes sense to try to reach out to the representatives from Ward 5 and Ward 6?
We could. One of the things that I learned through my capstone project is it's really like developing the relationships with stakeholders in the community, and they're not
Yep.
always like the governmental like representative. So I was thinking one thing I have, at least I know of one resident that I've identified that definitely is interested in helping us, and
Okay.
I've spoken. He does not live in that area, but he
Yep.
works with CASA and
Okay.
some other types of things. So he's really tied in. So I'd like to see if we could connect with him and then the faith-based community. If we could start developing some relationships with those folks. And then I know I always say it wrong. St. Barnard's has a really great little, did I say it wrong, Kate?
It's Bernard, St. Bernard.
I say I'm terrible at this.
Yeah.
It's not St. Bernard.
That's
Okay.
that's where we had, yes, definitely. No,
Yeah.
that's not.
And I think now it's maybe more even Our Lady of Guadalupe, but I'm
Okay,
not
I can
sure.
do that.
I'm not sure.
Our Lady of Guadalupe. So they have a group that is not all Riverdale Park residents, but I know like
A lot.
Rosa, our former chief, used to go, and it's like really informal and talking about things that are important to them and to that community. So that's another like
Yeah.
grassroots engagement type
Yeah.
thing that I think we can do.
Do we want to start creating like a Rolodex of names and people to contact?
Yeah.
Okay. Do you want to own that, Chihira? Sure. Okay.
Yeah,
So
I can.
yeah, and then we can start to think about talk to the what is it? There's the grass, there's the grassroots and the high grass, and they have all the people who do the grassroots stuff have all sorts of different names. I'm sure Heather knows them all. But we can start to talk to people to figure out how to frame our message, and yeah, that would be so. If anybody has any ideas, we'll get them to Jahira, and then we can start to try to figure out how to reach out to them. That's good.
Yeah.
Okay.
Sounds great.
Okay. On that note, I think my supper's almost done. My kid is making dinner.
Oh, good.
I don't think anything's on fire yet.
Good deal. Just Quantico.
Okay. Yeah.
All right.
That's
Well,
perfect.
then I'll move to adjourn.
Okay.
You.
Thanks,
All right.
everybody, and we'll
Thank
see you
you.
later. Yeah.
See you in a month. Thank you, Jessica.
Take care. Certainly.
Thanks.
Take care,
Thanks,